Swaay.Health.
Hey everyone, I'm John Lynn, the founder of Swaay.Health. We're excited to bring you another in our series of interviews with top leaders in healthcare marketing. And our guest today is Jamie Gier. She's fractional healthcare CMO. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, excited to have you on. One of our Swaay.Health 2025 award winners. We're going to get to that. But before we go there, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a healthcare marketer. Been in this industry for, gosh, I'm going to date myself, but almost 30 years now. Starting out when EMRs were really getting some traction, and now fast forward today, and we've probably got thousands upon different solutions, but mostly all in healthcare marketing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's funny to think about that. Like I think my first blog post was 20 years ago in December. And it's like, at that time, it's like, should we do EMRs? We've changed quite a bit since then.
Yes, we have changed quite a bit since then.
Yeah. Well, talk to us about it. You know, you were the winner of the Swaay.Health 2025 Ad of the Year for an amazing ad. What was it like to win that award at the Swaay.Health Live conference?
It was such a great feeling. At DexCare, I had a very small team, limited resources like most CMOs do. And so you have to rely on a high degree of creativity and a lot of ideation and teamwork. And so it was a proud moment because so much had gone into it from almost every single person on marketing touched that campaign. So it was taking a win for an entire team, which felt really good. But also, we took a little bit of a chance with that campaign. It is difficult to do humor in healthcare. I've done it, at certain places, certainly ran a campaign in my early days at GE where we used a little bit of humor, but it's difficult to do that. And so we had to think very intentionally around how do we be humorous around such a serious subject, which I'll get into in just one moment. But for it to grab so much attention and get the traction and the engagement that we were looking for was testament to the fact that you can do humor in healthcare. And I think it kind of takes the edge off a little bit too, where everything seems to be so serious.
Yeah. And you make an interesting point around the smaller teams. I mean, we hear this a lot in Swaay.Health where they're like, well, we're not GE, right? That has this, how many marketing team. It's
right.
Massive, right? And I'm like, but you don't understand. I hear from GE and they're like, we can't get anything approved. And we, not necessarily GE in particular, but one that size, right? It's like they're dealing with other challenges. They don't have the flexibility to be as creative or, is that kind of what you've seen? It's interesting. You've worked in both environments.
Absolutely. I saw that both at GE and I saw that at Microsoft. Now they both have strong brands, but in some cases you want to kind of bend the rules a little bit for your particular market or segment or buyer. So when you're beholden to such strong, rigid brand guidelines, and as a brand strategist, I get it. I'm not, I'm not condemning them for doing that, but I much prefer the environment in which you have a little bit more creative liberty with brand, especially as a brand strategist, to think a little bit more about how you would apply it in certain scenarios. So I like the building and maintaining that a bit and having a little bit more creative freedom.
Yeah, that's awesome. So talk to us about the 26 days of DexCare campaign. What went into it? How did it come together? And then, of course, let's finish off with the impact of the campaign itself.
Sure. Thank you. I absolutely love this campaign for a variety of reasons, but let me tell you how it first started. We know on average, it takes 26 days to see for routine care in America. It's crazy. It's ludicrous. Yeah. And we were trying to figure out how do we underscore why that 26 days to wait for routine care is just crazy. So we wanted to contextualize that by what you can do in 26 days outside of healthcare. So we got into in a conference room, my team and I, and we just did this crazy zany brainstorm on what can you master in 26 days that just shows the absurdity of why waiting 26 days for routine care is nuts. So it came out, it was this idea And it was actually so much fun because we were coming up with all of these weird things like, well, in 26 days, you can probably master becoming a crocheting expert, or mastering the unicycle, but we wanted to just contextualize the absurdity of waiting 26 days with other things that you can do in your life. And that's what kind of prompted it. We also wanted to create something that was attention getting. And a lot of the times, attention getting, you could do something humorous. And as I mentioned before, it's hard to do humor in healthcare because at the end of the day, it is pretty serious. You know, we take into consideration that if you have to wait 26 days to see a doctor, what happens in those 26 days is care is delayed. So we don't, we're not dismissing the seriousness of the problem, but in order to get people's attention on the problem to begin with, we wanted to use humor. So the whole
but you also don't want to shame the doctor, right? Who there's reasons why it's 26 days is because there's so much demand, right? So that's the challenge.
Yeah, you don't want to shame them because in some cases it's out of their control. There's probably more demand than there is supply. We know that we have an imbalance there. And so how do you get smart about using your resources? How do you navigate patients to other venues of care so they can be seen faster without compromising quality care? So as part of the campaign, we knew if we were going to do this, John, that we also had to educate on the seriousness of the matter, but also how can you solve for that so patients don't have to wait 26 days. So part of the campaign was not just the creative aspect to the message we wanted to convey, but all of the various tools that we were going to have to use to bring it to life. We know that video performs the best in grabbing people's attention. So we wanted to do a video series of different things that you can master in 26 days as we were bringing attention to this very serious subject. And those videos would then direct people to a landing page where they can learn more about the problem and how health systems can help solve it, again, by way of navigating patients to other choices and options that they might have. So we wanted to trickle this out and make sure that the campaign had some shelf life to it. It wasn't just a one and done. So we decided to do 10 different videos, 10 different things that you can master, and we would drip these out every week. And so we wanted to create some anticipation with our audience that once they saw one and they knew that every week we would release one, if they were funny enough, they would be looking for it and keep their eyes open for the next one. And so the campaign was designed to keep engagement over a period of time as we were educating the marketplace about the seriousness of the problem.
Yeah, and then we want to go binge them if it's later in the campaign too, right? You watch one of the later ones, you're like, wait, I want to go see all of them, right?
And we did. We made it so it was very easy that if you watched one, then you can easily see the entire series that we had on YouTube.
Nice. That's really cool. You know, it's interesting to hear you talk about how it started, is this like creative session. And it's interesting. Colin and I have found something really interesting. He loves those creative sessions. He would spend all day doing sessions like that. Me, I hate them. But it's interesting how it's different personalities. Are you a lover or hater of the creative session, or somewhere in the middle?
I love them, and here's why. I think the pendulum has swung so far in the discipline of marketing towards data and analytics, the science of what we do, that it's, to me, so fulfilling and joyful when I can go to the opposite side, which is the creativity and the art of what we do as marketers. So I do consider myself kind of middle of the brain when it comes to being right and left, but we spend so much time just analyzing numbers, crunching numbers, that it kind of takes the joy out of why we originally got into marketing in the first place, which is the creative nature. So I happen to love those sessions when we do them. I'm going to say something a little controversial, maybe. And that is, this is also why I believe we should spend time in the office. I know with this whole remote first culture that we've kind of gravitated towards, and I get that. I see the value of working from home. My preference is hybrid, but it does not replace the in-person interactions and brainstorms that you can have. And this campaign did start with us being in the office, in a room, having fun, laughing, trying to come up with this idea. We didn't have to hire a creative agency to do it. We did it. And yes, we did end up hiring an agency to help us with the production of the videos. which is another piece of it. It's been a while since I was actually on site in studio filming, and to see the behind the scenes of how you actually pull this together and how you bring great creativity and storytelling together. So much fun. I captured so many little clips and photos from it just because it reminded me of the people behind the scenes that make magic happen when it comes to these sorts of campaigns.
Yeah, I actually steal from WordPress, which started being a remote first company before any of the in vogue COVID remote happened. And he said something interesting. He said, we actually spend just as much money remotely because we bring the teams together regularly. To your point, they need to be together to break bread, to collaborate. And we found, Colin and I, that anything creative, we need to be together, to collaborate on it, or at least it's more effective together. So
I think it's more effective.
yeah, that's interesting.
And that's crazy that I have to say that it's controversial to even say that anymore.
I mean, we started out remote first too, and I'm a remote first kind of guy, but there are times when it makes sense, right? Like you have to invest in the, in-person time, and it depends on how you evolve your team too, right?
Yeah,
it's interesting, but yeah, it is interesting. That's controversial these days.
I know.
Yeah.
But and we did it on a shoestring budget too. Long gone were the days where I had a huge budget at GE and Microsoft. So you learn how to find really talented people for a limited budget. And so that was the other fulfilling piece of winning this award, is when you're up against others who may have more resources. But I knew that it was our own brains that came up with it, and getting the right team together with limited resources, it was just even that much more impactful. And we saw the results. I mean, for this campaign, it outperformed all of our other campaigns by double digits. Wow. And still it's performing. I checked in with my team, and still performing very high. And I think it's because of the creative nature behind it. We saw a huge account lift, brand lift among our targeted accounts. And I think it's worth noting, and probably true for any marketer in healthcare, is you have a limited TAM. We're all going after the same hospitals and health systems. And so you have to be very precise and targeted in who you're trying to get to engage with you. And so we saw a huge uplift on the number of target accounts that visited the site and stayed on the site to explore. So we knew that we were offering some valuable content to them.
That's interesting. I mean, I've often said this to people, like, you're competing with Netflix and YouTube, for attention. And yeah. So it's like, how do you do that? And how do you make sure that they are? But it's interesting that because you provided a creative outlet that was funny and entertaining, they spend time saying, okay, tell me more about this company that is funny and entertaining. I think that's a good key insight.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that it was the first time that we had tested connected TV through LinkedIn. That is a primary channel for most B2B marketers. And so we wanted to test that out. And I think the verdict is still out, but what was fulfilling is that we made sure that even though we were only focused on certain types of organizations, we did make sure that anyone from DexCare could see it if they were viewing any of the streaming services in which that would show. And we had a couple of employees who came to us, and they were so excited when they saw DexCare show up. And so part of the other aspect of the campaign was just the internal excitement that it generated for our own employees, who just felt a sense of pride of, oh my gosh, we're seeing DexCare as I'm watching Hulu or Disney Plus. And so that was really fulfilling for them to come back and go, oh, okay, I get it.
It's interesting you say that. I've seen a lot of DexHealth stuff on streaming stuff that I do, and it's always fun, like you said, to see a health IT company doing that, yeah. And it is accessible. It'll be interesting to see the metrics as they play out over time on that. Well, congrats on the campaign, and it's definitely a well-deserved honor for you and your team. I want to shift gears a little bit to maybe a few more kind of higher level trending topics, if you will, or industry trends. And I'd love to hear, what do you think are some of the keys to leading marketing efforts in this current healthcare marketing environment, which I would describe as like healthcare organizations that have limited budget, uncertainty ahead, and so that's limiting it even more. But what would you say are some of the keys to leading marketing today?
Boy. So if I just let me frame it within this first. it doesn't feel like the market has expanded in terms of number of buyers. Again, we have a limited TAM. If you're looking at it from the lens of hospitals and health systems, but even medical groups. But there's been so much consolidation, there's been a lot of acquisition, that the market hasn't necessarily expanded. But the number of technology vendors, I would say, since I started out in this industry, has tripled or quadrupled. So if you can imagine, we're all going after the same buying groups, the same buyer, the same influencers. And so you're having to work even harder to get their attention. And in many cases, it may not be a perfect line item on someone's budget. I will say that when I worked for, an EMR vendor, it was a little easier because everyone was looking for clinical documentation or CPOE or EMR, and then you had meaningful use, and you had these mandates that precipitated the growth in that category. We don't have that as much, and so you're having to work even extra hard. And so it's probably not surprising that a lot of digital health companies end up not making it. Because it's very, very difficult to compete. And I'll bring this full circle in a minute. But that's kind of the landscape. And I think most healthcare technology marketers would agree with me. It's
a good
reality in which
description.
we play, which is why if you're going to go work for a high growth company in health, it's not for the faint of heart at all. But I think it does require a certain level of extra creativity in how you're going to effectively compete for hearts and minds. So some of the things, John, that I think are still true, even if I go back 20 years ago, is this is largely a referral industry. It's largely a referral industry. Yes, we have industry research groups that still matter and help to help health systems narrow down, or providers narrow down their vendor list. But the reality is they talk to each other. And so when I talk to my team, and as we think about our marketing strategies, as we think about the different channels and distribution channels and marketing mix, I never forget the fact that if we are not cultivating and activating our own customer base to help sell on our behalf, especially in their communities, that we don't always have line of sight into, it's very difficult to get traction in this industry because word of mouth is everything. We have largely oversold and underpromised to many providers. Their jobs are on the line. One wrong decision on implementation can cost them their jobs. You got to take that serious. And so they're always talking to each other to vet and validate different solutions. So if you don't have the ability to do that with your own customers, and then also find who those influencers are. I don't care how great your digital marketing program is, that is just one channel. If you don't have the ones that are going to actually bring a deal across the finish line, all of that's for naught. So
it's fascinating, right? I mean, I'm just thinking through, who would have thought that enterprise IT is a word of mouth market? But you're right. And I think that's why, even just bringing in our healthcare IT today perspective, so many vendors want to do customer stories. Because it turns out, how do you get the CIO to tell all their other CIO friends that that they use your product, right? And getting them on a video, to your point, video is powerful. Now they share it to their audience, and now their friends all find out, oh, you use them and you like them and you're willing to go on video. That's fascinating. I mean, it's essentially a type of word of mouth marketing.
It is, and there's nothing novel, but sometimes I feel like in chasing what might be novel, you forget about the basics of human behavior and how people search for solutions and how they end up buying solutions. We forget that because we get so focused on what might be the cool thing of the day, and we forget just simply about human behavior. I think about myself, and you might do this too. So I belong to a few CMO communities. We're pretty tight. And when I go out to the Slack community and we have a specific channel just dedicated to vendor recommendations, that's my first go-to when I'm trying to figure out how I want to solve a particular problem as a marketer. I go there first to see what everyone else is doing and how they're solving for it. So think about healthcare buyers. They do the same thing. They do exactly the same thing. And so you need to make sure that you're there, that your solution is discovered by way of the people having those conversations to begin with.
Yeah. It reminds me of the CIO that said, John, you know how we make these decisions, right? And I was like, how? He said, we have a text group. He's like, it's all CIOs. He said, now, just to be fair, we're sharing stock picks and tea times and everything else.
Right.
And then we say, hey, which products are you using for this, along with the stock picks and whatever else that they're sharing. So yeah, it highlights your point in a big way.
It does. And that's, again, not to say that other channels are not important. You have to be where your buyers are. And we know, especially in any B2B industry, it's not a linear journey by no means. It is like this messy mess of spaghetti. And people are, they start, stop, start, stop. But I know there's a lot of research that also says, and I don't even know where you can cite this, but there's a lot of research that suggests the buyer's journey is 80% over by the time that they even come to you and ask to see a demo, because they've been talking, they've been searching, they've been doing their own. So you just have to make sure that you still have that multi-channel strategy so that you are where your buyers might be as they're searching and discovering. But we tend to forget this other thing, which is if your customers are not talking about you in a favorable way, you're missing an opportunity, a big one, to actually get more customers.
Yeah, and with AI, I think it's changing that even more so, where they can do a lot of the research using AI to understand your product before they even hit your website. So, and I might argue that there's 10 spaghetti plates of buyer journeys of all 10 people on the committee that could all ruin your deal, and they all have a different buyer journey that they're going through. So,
yeah, well, and
that's
you
the
know who I
challenge.
worry about as well. I mean, we know who we typically know who the decision makers are and who the buyers, but there are hidden buyers. There are those influencers. It could be that one voice. It could be that physician, for example, who has a lot of clout and weight, may not
Yep.
be formally identified as part of the decision-making committee, but certainly has a lot of influence and can make or break.
No, you're right. My favorite hidden buyer is like the CISO. If the CISO has never seen you, doesn't know that you're in healthcare, doesn't believe that you're secure in the way healthcare needs to, you're screwed, right? Like if they say you're not secure, then I don't care. Like anyway, it's an uphill battle if you don't, right?
It
So
is. That's right. That's right.
yeah. Same with a CIO. Maybe your buyer is actually the radiology person, the leader of radiology IT. But if the CIO has never heard of you, they might ruin the deal as well. So it's
Right,
tough.
because they're gonna be brought in to help do an official tech evaluation. Right? They'll
Yep.
be looking at things like, does it integrate with our core EMR? What's the cost to actually managing and maintaining the system? So that's a good point. They may not be the ultimate buyer, but they certainly will be part of the evaluation.
Exactly. So, you may have just shared it, but, what would you say is maybe the most underrated marketing tool or even effort or approach, or, that not enough people are leveraging, or maybe they're just not leveraging it effectively?
I would say influencer marketing.
Hmm.
And here's what I mean by that, because oftentimes when we hear about influencers, we think of the B2C space and, who's showing up on TikTok, who's doing that sort of
Yeah.
thing. That's not what I mean by this. Although I would surmise that if you have a well-known public figure who's singing accolades about your solution, that's not going to hurt your brand unless they have a brand reputation problem. But this again goes back, John, to the hidden figures within the
Mhm.
buying group. We think we've got them dialed in, but we might single thread and not multi-thread, but also miss out on those who have very strong voices. And so they're not always easy to identify unless you have an internal champion within the buyer that is willing to disclose that. And you can help that internal champion bring on these other voices, these other opinion heads, if you will, that could persuade someone to either do business with you or not. And so I think that, again, this is not novel, but gets overlooked, is how do you reach and engage them over time? We know that these sales processes are very long, so there's a lot of patience required there. But making more investments in those types of programs designed to reach and engage those hidden figures, those influencers, more than we do.
Yeah. I mean, and I see that a lot with health IT companies, obviously, in particular, is that they focus on trying to drive the right lead that's going to drive the buying process, which is important, right? You need an advocate internal to be able to do that. But if that's all you do, then you have an uphill battle. If you don't do the other influencers, the other people on the committee, yeah, that's really interesting.
You have to multi-thread. And then there's one other piece that I want to mention, because I think that this is probably true in any industry, but I think it's even more so for healthcare. And that is, you absolutely have to be able to demonstrate value and a sense of urgency for the problem that your solution addresses. You are, because of going back to my original comment around the limited TAM, you have to work extra hard to demonstrate that you can actually add value to their organization and how they deliver care, whatever it might be. And so if you don't have the means by which you can construct a story for them on the opportunity and how you can realize that for them, they're not going to have a sense of urgency to want to do business. Maybe they will 6-12 months down the road, but today they need a sense of urgency as to why they should prioritize you above the 50 other initiatives that they have and the 200 other companies vying for their attention as well. So if you don't have a way in which that you can demonstrate that, so there's customer ROI, but you also have to show them that they have a problem that needs to be addressed. And so that's the beauty of, I would say, product marketing, for example, and being able to demonstrate that. So that's really, really important in this industry too.
Yep. And they have enough bright, shiny objects that are distracting them. And if you don't show them that number and that aligns with their strategic priorities, it's almost a impossible, situation.
Well, and listen, I don't have any data to back this up, but in my own mindset, this is how I think about it. Let's just say that they have 5 strategic imperatives for the next year to 3 years. I always think to myself, there's probably 50 to 75 different ways that they can attach something to that initiative. So how do you effectively compete within that initiative among the sea of other ways in which they can solve or investments that they're going to make? It's mind-boggling, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you just kind of blew my mind, because you're competing not only for their attention, but with the other people who could solve that same problem within that strategic priority.
Yes, and it's further complicated, John, by it may not be a direct competitor. It's just a different way to solve. And so your competitive set, if you think about that, might be very small. Your real competition is for their time and their budget.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, the solution to all this is AI. No, I mean, I want to wrap up with a little AI conversation, which we know it's not the cure-all, although it helps, right? It's changing the landscape, that's for sure. I'd love to hear your thoughts, right? You've been across large companies, small companies, smaller companies anyways. How should a leader be approaching AI when it comes to their marketing efforts with so much happening? And where would you start and how would you be approaching it?
Well, I first like to start with AI is not necessarily to replace humans. It's there to augment. And so you have to get over the fear, because I think that there is a lot of fear. Full disclosure, John, I would say a year and a half ago, I was part of the resistance movement when it came to AI. I was so nervous and worried that it would be used to replace the creative nature and critical thinking of humans. Because at the end of the day, AI is fed by humans. But I was very worried that the things that we've mastered as marketers or software developers, or name your craft, would be replaced. And there would be a lack of appreciation for our own brains. And so I was part of that. Fast forward today, I'm very excited about its potential. I do use different tools. And so when I talk to my teams, or I'm in my own communities, we do talk about it as, how do you augment humans and the way in which they can be more efficient and more effective in practicing their craft? That's how I think about it. And so if you think about it from the efficiency standpoint, we're all being tasked to do more with less. Great, check. So how do I leverage AI, ChatGPT or Perplexity or name your tool to say, to conduct that, what I would typically spend $150,000 research project on my behalf. If we got the right prompts, it's amazing what ChatGPT or any of those tools can do to actually conduct market research. Great, I just saved a bunch of money and I probably got just as good of an outcome. Maybe not perfect, but enough to get me to the next, milestone in that project, whatever it might be. And so we look at it purely from that standpoint. I think AI still has a ways to go when it comes to creativity and stuff, but it's getting much better. I'm pretty impressed with it. So look at it from a human augmentation standpoint, look at it from an efficiency perspective, and I think it helps to get people over the mental hurdle of, oh my gosh. I think the other thing too is when I think of marketing specifically and how much data we're amassing now on our buyers, on our campaigns, on our programs, it's a lot of data. So how do you quickly synthesize it, see the results, but also get like next steps or recommendations? I think AI has a lot of potential to do some of that drain on the brain kind of work to make me more effective more quickly, to synthesize a lot of the data that I'm collecting on my buyers and my campaigns. I get excited about that because we are challenged every day to prove our value as marketers. And I think AI has a lot of potential to help aid in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Perplexity too. I think that's going to be the winner for marketers. I don't know if you see the same, and we probably need to do a Swaay.Health survey on AI tools and see if that's true. But I hear that a lot from marketers. They seem to love Perplexity more than the ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever else is out there. So it's interesting that you mentioned it as well.
Well, and they're also in the news today. I don't know if you saw just their whole CEO of HubSpot sold the domain os.ai to Perplexity. So now as they're trying to deliver on this worthy operating system kind of strategy, I thought it was kind of interesting. I can't remember. I think I read somewhere that it was for $150,000 or something. I don't know. I could be wrong, so don't quote me, but something worth looking up. But yeah, I think that it's been fun to experiment with that. I also think that my existing tech vendors are starting to use AI more effectively to help me be a better user of the tech that I've invested in. So there's some exciting things that are happening there. I think, in healthcare specifically, John, to put on my CIO hat, but anyone's hat really, is with it comes a huge amount of responsibility, especially if we're using it for how we deliver care and what information that it contains about our patients or us as consumers. And so I start thinking of the implications around HIPAA and privacy and security and that sort of thing. I think we have, there's obviously a legal obligation there, but I think just an ethical obligation as to how we use it for ways in which that we know more about our patients and then also how we deliver care.
Love it. Jamie, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, to learn from you, and be able to share your knowledge and insights with the Swaay.Health community. So I appreciate you sitting down with us, and congratulations on the Swaay.Health Award for Ad of the Year. And thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare marketing content like this, be sure to check it out at Swaay.Health. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, John.